So, can you just start by telling us a bit about you and your health journey?
Yeah, sure. Bit about me. My health journey, I suppose, it's a big part of me. It all started when I was 24, and I was working in advertising, marketing, media, and I was at the airport one morning when I was flying home to see family, and I had a stroke. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had a form of Staph virus in my body, and that caused a brain hemorrhage, like a stroke. And so went into hospital, spent the next 3 weeks in a coma, um, 2 months on life support, and over a year in hospital. So I acquired a ton of visible and invisible disabilities. I live now with a permanent brain injury. I'm in a wheelchair with my left leg, right toes, and 9 fingertips amputated. Um, a bunch of other stuff which I can go into if we have time, but now I work as a disability consultant because I realised that media marketing, advertising industry, loved that work, but there wasn't a lot of there wasn't any representation of disability, or very very little. But there was also a bit of a gap in terms of people telling them how to do it, with that lived experience of both with a disability but also with industry experience. So I'm trying to do that sort of work now, as well as managing chronic illness and disability and all those sorts of things. So it's a bit of a juggling act.
And what was that experience like for you? Having a stroke, that's obviously very sudden. Like, that's not something you were expecting at all. It just happened and then it completely changed your life.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember any of it, so I sort of talk through what happened, but I'm going on what my family told me, and they had reports from the because I was traveling alone. What airport staff told them and hospital staff told them and everything. So I have roughly 6 months of amnesia prior to the stroke, and about 4 months after, I have zero recollection of what happened. So I've filled in the gaps based on what my family and friends and everything have told me. But I don't remember my ex boyfriend, where I worked, all those
Mm.
sorts of. But it was a strange feeling, knowing I don't remember coming out of the coma or anything.
Yeah.
First recollection being awake in hospital was roughly 4 months after. And it was a weird feeling of, on one half of on one hand, I was fucking terrified. And on the other hand, I was bloody grateful because I knew that I wasn't supposed to be alive. I wasn't supposed to have lived through the night, and all these things my family told me, that every day they'd go to ICU and then hear my life support machines beeping. I had every organ in my body had shut down, and so every organ was being kept alive by machines. And the fact that machines were beeping, they knew I was still alive, and that was a relief. So the fact that I was still there was great. But on the other hand, I was really, really just depressed every day. I found out something else was going to be chopped off, and I also had 24 years worth of stereotypes in my head that told me that disability meant all sorts of shitty things. You'll never work, you'll never, you know, get a relationship, you'll never have friends, you'll never have all of these things, which in my personal experience, that's total BS. Um, Everyone has their own experiences, but I've found really fulfilling work and found a really wonderful husband, and all these things which I'm now doing. That's really why I do a lot of the work I do now, because I knew that I couldn't do anything about my physical body and couldn't do anything to change my permanent disabilities and chronic illnesses. But I had these years of business experience and industry experience, and I could do something to change the industries and all of the um, all of the stuff that was telling us that our lives with disabilities and chronic illness were worthless and we were not valued and all of those sorts of things. So that's what I've been doing, partnering with people in the industries and with people with disabilities, of course, and helping them to do that sort of work and change perceptions.
And what was it like going back into that space? Because obviously you already worked in those areas, but then your life had completely changed. And then going back, what was that like? And were there any challenges you faced?
So I went back to work in advertising after my stroke for a little while, and I love the work. I still do really love the creative work and writing and working on briefs. But as someone with a brain injury, and I'm over 25% blind now, and all sorts of things, I have trouble with processing and other things related to my brain injury. It wasn't the sort of work, working from 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. It wasn't the sort of being in an agency, but I still do work on content freelance now, so I can work on that sort of work on in my own hours of work with producers, just not in an agency setting. But I love the work. It really excites me. But just being in an agency like I previously wasn't right for me. So now I consult with agencies about how to write scripts and how to plan cameras and how to do the work. So it's not tokenistic. So it's not a real dumpster fire. People with disabilities, it just doesn't, you don't look at it and just cringe and think that's so wrong.
And where do you think we are at the moment with diversity in the media? Do you think we've come very far?
It's definitely improved. There's a long way to go. So it's not perfect, but there's a long way to go. If I look at it, say, when I was a kid, for example, it's nothing like it was, 30, 20, 30, 40 odd years ago. It's come ahead in leaps and bounds. But in the last maybe 5, 10 years, it's really taken off. So I won't say everything's done. There's nothing else to do because I did a TEDx talk recently, and one of the stats that I used was that in advertising alone, recent Nielsen data showed that people with disability are featured in only 1% of advertising during prime time. And that's bullshit because 20% of the market, and I mean, your audience would know this, 20%, and 1% it's just stupid because we're all walking around with credit cards saying, yeah, we want to buy your stuff. So market to us, sell to us. And just from, socially, it's a great idea, but I've got a business background, and financially and economically, it makes really good business sense. So that's something that businesses should pay more attention to as well.
Yeah. And do you find that there's like any pushback from companies? Like, or do you think they are open to that diversity and maybe they just aren't sure how to do it? Or you think they just don't want to?
Definitely not sure how to do it. It's a conversation I have with them when I present. I go in and talk to them and say, guys, there are no stupid, not guys, girls, everybody. there are no stupid questions here, because there's so much fear in the room. And I start by saying, I used to be one of you. I was that really scared copywriter who was so terrified of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. I did nothing at all basically, and that was so wrong with me. And that's how so many of them are. They're terrified of doing the wrong thing, getting called out. And we all sit around and we have a rule that nothing that's shared is going to get called out on Twitter or anything like that. So they're free to ask me the silly questions, so to speak. And if I don't know the answer, because I'm only one person, I don't know everything. I'll certainly pass them on to the Indigenous man with disabilities or something like that, or the gay guy with disabilities who will know the answer. So I'll pass them on to the people who do know the answers. But there's a lot of fear there. So trying to dismantle some of that fear is really what I'm trying to do, and give us really practical answers as well, instead of just saying do better, 10,000 word book, do better. It's like no, that's you know, knowing how the industry works, you've got really tight turnarounds and tight deadlines and those sorts of things, and that's not going to work in certain industries. So we need to look for practical solutions. And I worked with Media Diversity Australia, writing a handbook for journalists, and that it does provide really, really practical solutions when journalists have, say, a 10-minute deadline to learn language guides, and that was written in conjunction with people with disabilities and peak organisations, so they can go and find the right language to use, or find suggestions about where to go for more information, rather than just do better on a Twitter or an FU. that's not helpful. So again, coming back to what I would have liked when I was I'll put my hand up and say ignorant, but wanting to learn, wanting to know more, wanting to do better. And if you do better, read my 10,000 word book or 90,000 word book would not have helped me. So that's the approach I try and take.
Yeah. I mean, I can't fully, you can't fully blame people because we have been taught like a lot of fear around disability, even just saying the word disability or disabled. And, people have been taught, no, use the word special needs or differently abled. So now we've kind of got to go through and like unteach people what they've learned.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of unlearning to be done, and everybody's different. That's the message I always try and reinforce. Everybody's different. Don't take what I say as gospel. I'm only one person. You'll have a different opinion to me, so will the next person and the next person, and everybody's completely different.
Yeah. But I think it does just come down to the trying. Like, I understand that disability can be a bit scary to learn because there are so many different disabilities and they affect people in different ways. And that can seem quite complicated. But I think it does come down to just willingness to learn and listen. I think that's all we really ask for.
Intention as well. If someone's intention is good and they mean well, then I'm not going to shoot them down and turn around and launch into them about a nasty response or something like that either. So that's just me. You might have a completely different
opinion. Yeah, no, I feel the same. You talked about before having those stereotypes after you had your stroke. How has that changed for you? When did you learn, oh wait, that is kind of bullshit?
I learned that was bullshit pretty early on. So early on, I sort of saw that I could be a Paralympian, or I could continue to be a sick, disabled person in hospital pajamas, which I already was and still am occasionally. So I know that's a reality for some people, and I definitely am that person sometimes. But that's not all our life is. There's so much more. There's plenty of people with disabilities out there who are, raising kids, doing all these sorts of things. And pre-disability, I was at the gym all the time doing all these great things, and I knew I couldn't go back to my old life, but I wanted to, not try and go back to it. I wasn't that naive, but I wanted to maintain bits and pieces of it where I could, because it was still me. So I'm still, going to the gym a few times a week, and I look a bit silly doing what I can on the, but I don't care. I love it. And Yeah, I don't drive anymore, but I worked out pretty early on that it was complete BS, but I'd already I had friends in the community and those sorts of things, and I saw what they did, and so I already had a hint that it was BS. But having known people with a disability and having one is completely
Yeah.
different.
And what kind of advice would you give people who do, whether it's in the media or another space, like want to advocate for themselves or for other people?
Do it, do what feels right for you. Don't think you have to be a certain type of advocate, that there's only one type of advocate, but you have to fit. We talk about stereotypes and fitting into this box of, there's only, boxes of stereotypes, but I found early on in my advocacy journey that there's also stereotypes and boxes with advocacy. You have to be like this to be a disability advocate. Say this, and that's bullshit too. So, um, yeah, do it your way. Do what feels right for you. If you want to talk about whatever to be a disability advocate, do it that way. Be authentic and do do you. If that if that's if that's the best way you can advocate for people with disability, then great.
And within the media space, where do you think we'll be in like 5 years? And where would you like us to be?
In 5 years, I'm not too sure, but this kind of answers the 5-year question as well. So I've said a few times that I would love to be out of a job, in that at the moment I do a lot of work with businesses and agencies and people, sort of hand holding and talking to them about this is how you include disability, and because I completely recognize that it's a hard thing to do. It's nuanced and it is a little bit tricky, and it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't. It should just be, you and I can say it's not hard, but we kind of know it a bit better. Um, but 17 years ago, I had no fucking idea. So I kind of do understand that it's not that easy. So in the future, I hope that there's absolutely no work for me, that all the businesses and all the agencies and everybody is like, we don't need you. We got this disability inclusion thing down pat. We know all about it. We've got disabled people working in our offices. It's all inclusive. We don't need disabled anything, disability consultants, nothing. They're in all our ads, everything. So that would be my hope for the future, and that I don't have to call even little things. I don't have to call ahead to restaurants everywhere I go. Google going, is it in, are there bathrooms? Is there a ramp? There's inclusive design everywhere.
Mm.
The whole world is just maybe I'm just living in another world.
No, I think that's what we all want. I think that's pretty much sums up what we're all are looking for.
Ever since my stroke, I haven't been able to control my body temperature, so I'm always
Mm.
overheating. Not this time of the year, but yeah. So air conditioning, ramps, and yeah, that would be.
Yeah. Sounds nice. Is there anything particular that you're working on right now? Any projects or
I'm
anything?
doing some work with Griffith Inclusive Futures, one of the universities here, and they're doing some really, with the University Inclusive Futures, some really exciting work with the researchers and academics, because researchers and academics do amazing stuff, but the engagement council that I'm on is made up completely of people with disabilities, and Dinesh Palapana, Dr. Dinesh is chair of that, and we get together and we talk about some cool projects that we can do. And one that we're looking at the moment is around transport and the fact that cab drivers are always driving off on people with disabilities. It happens to me all the time. Facing a wheelchair or a person with a guide dog and just keep on driving. So we're looking into legislation around that, but there are always tiny little things where we're looking to do, whether it's environmental. When I say environmental changes to the built environment or other things that we can work on. But I suppose my TEDx talk that took a whole chunk of time out of my life, that's about to be released. So that will take a few more weeks out of my life to
That's so exciting though. I think that's such an important project.
Yeah, it will be, because it's a global thing, and getting the businesses to pay attention, because for so long, and it's one thing that I suppose really I noticed when I suppose came to do more work in the disability space. Disability and business and disability had always been, I looked at it strategically with my background. It had always been help disability because it's a nice thing to do. That's good. It's true. We all know it's true, but fuck that. I've spent enough boardrooms to know that there are people there whose job it is to go look at the bottom of a profit and loss statement, and that's all they give a shit about is the dollar figure at the bottom of that profit and loss statement. And they're the ones making the decisions about content. And so we need to appeal to them. Everybody knows disability, supporting disability, good for humanity, tick. We've all got that message for decades, and it kind of hasn't been changing things. So let's take a different approach. So we've been looking at really ramping up the messaging around disability is financially and economically good for business. So that's the sort of thing that it's looking at. $1.9 trillion globally is the estimated disposable income of people with disabilities, and like Apple and Microsoft, some of the really, really big players have gotten onto this. And so we need some of the Australian players to catch on, because the US and the UK, they've been really great, but Australia's kind of just not playing ball as much. So I'd really love to see Australia catch up a bit more. That would be great.
That would be great. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on today. Where can we find you and keep up with your work?
My website, lisacox.co, lisacox.co, is also the same as my Instagram, and then LinkedIn is the other place.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to get our episodes every 2 weeks, and to leave a review if you are enjoying the podcast. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Sick of It Podcast, and Instagram at sickofit_podcast. I'll talk to you soon.